Hey, hello guys, how are you? Okay, my name is Arun, and so far we have discussed about single responsibility principle, then we discussed about open close principle, and then we also discussed about Liskov substitution principle. I'm sure you guys have checked those videos. Let's now take our discussion forward and discuss about interface segregation principle. Right. So let's jump into our definition, scenario, and the code. Okay. So though the name is actually beautifully explaining, right, interface segregation, that you should segregate your interfaces into different interfaces than using an heavy. But officially, what the definition is, that no client means who is going to use those interfaces or classes. No client should be forced to depend or implement on methods it does not use, right? So definition is simple, right? For example, somebody is using a client is using a class, and it only wants to, it is going to use only two methods of that class, or it is going to implement only two methods of the interface. But if interface is having 7 methods, right, then class is actually forced to implement all the 7 methods. Otherwise, on compile time only you will get errors. So that's what it is saying, that if class doesn't want to, it doesn't need to, then you should not force, right? Now let's try to understand this with a scenario. So what we will do is we'll create any two classes which is having some methods in common and some their specific methods and features inside it, right? So here I took example of two things. One is I'm thinking of printers, right? So we have seen there were classic printers which used to print only, right? And maybe scan and print, right? But now these days you have a printer which is having multiple features, multi-feature printer. Let's try to create class of these two printers, right? So again, I'm showing you a brute force way, which we normally do, and then I will show you a correct way, that how we could have done it in a better way, where we are not actually violating this principle, interface segregation principle. Okay. So here what we did is we are actually having two classes, our classic printer and multi-feature printer, I'm calling it, right? And these two classes are actually implementing interface, which I'm calling it a big interface, just to be in context so that we can talk what exactly we want to focus on. So first is what kind of functionalities we wanted from our printers. So we tried to write down all functionalities into just declare those functionalities into my interface, that printer should be able to scan, then printer should be able to print, and when I got a new printer, then I added another functionality into my interface, which is fax, right? Now both the classes are actually inheriting this. That means for a multiple feature printer, this thing is fine, right? Because multiple feature printer which is a new printer is actually might be having a fax, right? So it will be able to write its implementation of it, that this is how I will do, send me the document, I will do the fax, blah blah blah, whatever the functionality is. Obviously it can print, right? So it will implement its definition, that how it's going to print, and then scan, right? Problem comes when you are actually forcing your classic printer to implement this interface, right? Because classic printer doesn't know what fax is, so it is forced. So either whether it will do throw exception, I cannot print, or whatever, send message, blah blah blah. But here you are actually forcing. And just for example, I actually also took that it cannot even scan. The only thing it can do is print, right? So we are forcing this class to implement these two functions, which this guy doesn't even know, right? So this is where we are violating the principle. We are having we made one heavy uh, interface, and we are trying to implement this in all similar kind of objects. Though classic printer and my multiple feature printer both are printers, right? But reality is we are actually forcing our classic printer to implement something which it doesn't understand. Now how we could have done it? It is actually very straightforward and simple. Like name suggested, we should have break these things into separate interfaces. So here is another class which I have created, ISP demo. What we did here is, rather than having an elephant interface, we created small interfaces, right? A unit which means something. So I created only iPrint, and if there are multiple functions which are always combined and those will always be part of something, then I may add more functions. I may declare more functions into my iPrint. For simplicity, I took only one. So iPrint is now a separate function, iScan is another separate function, and iFax is another separate function. Now here you may say that I'm actually, now my class need to inherit. Like for classic printer it is very straightforward. This guy understand print, it will inherit, it will implement iPrint, and simply it will give the implementation, its implementation of print function. But when it come to multiple feature printer, then it needs to inherit all the printers, and some of the languages does not provide multi you can say multiple inheritance or implementation, though I think both Java and C# do. So I'm not 100% sure there. We'll check it whether in Java we can do it or not. So now, but how we can do it? So if we want now if I want my elephant my big interface which my multiple feature printer can implement, so I can actually implement a bigger I can create a bigger interface which will inherit all small interfaces or combination of some small interfaces. And let's suppose there is another third printer, middle age printer, which can do scan and print. So what we will do is we will create another interface here, right? So we will have an interface like my medium size interface. So what this guy will do, it can do scan and it can do print, but what this guy doesn't do is it does not do fax. So if I will have a class, my middle age class, so rather than classic, it is like somewhat old. PR printer, right? So this guy now can actually inherit from my medium interface, right? And this guy will just simply implement these two features, these two functionalities which it understands. That's it. So this is what interface segregation principle is, that you should be segregate interfaces as much as you can. Means the every unit should be a logical unit, which is actually a class, an object is providing those functionalities, rather than writing everything into one interface and forcing our classes to implement those, right? Okay, so yeah, that's it about this one. Please download the code, try to use it, and in your project try to use interfaces in this manner, right? Okay, so thank you very much guys. Let's see you in next video. Take care. Bye bye.